Hi guys, it's Sophie. So today I'm going to be doing my January 2017 wrap-up, and this is the first month of wrap-ups where I've been trying to do my reading less. So it's much smaller than I'm used to, which I think is going to be nice. I'm hopefully going to be able to chat a little bit more about these books than I would be able to normally. So this month I read 2 fictional things and 5 non-fiction, so I'll go through the fiction first. So one I've just literally finished today is Foreign Soil by Maxine, Beneba, Clarke, and I heard about this one on Maryse's channel, and it's a collection of short stories that are all sort of centred around like Australia, but also kind of the immigrants' experience of Australia and kind of like the Caribbean as well, and some of them are set in Africa, so it's kind of like this mix. The author's from Australia or moved to Australia in her life at least, and it's just each one on their own. They're really interesting stories, and some of them are sad, some of them are quite hopeful, and I think it's an interesting collection overall. I've not really read anything else that's like it. I was trying to think of things I could compare it to for you guys. So I did wonder if this might be a little bit like In the Country by Mia Alvar, which is another collection of short stories that focuses around the experience of Filipinos and sort of the way in which people who've immigrated from the Philippines see themselves in the concept of home, kind of, in all these different countries. But I've not really read anything else like it. It was a good one. It was kind of one of my Diversathon picks, and I did really enjoy it. And I think, as I say, it's very different, so I find that in itself interesting. Yeah, and I think it's good. I think it's a solid set of stories. It doesn't have that sort of magical or whimsical element that I quite like in my stories. They were very real, but I think that's good for what this was. But in general, I tend to prefer things to be a little bit more off the wall. And the next collection of short stories I absolutely adored. I think it was my first 5-star read of the year, and these were Heartbreaker stories by Maryse Meijer. And where Foreign Soil is very realist, this is very weird, but I think an awful lot of people are going to like it. I spoke about this one a little bit in my last video when I filmed with Amy. So these are all really odd stories. They're very dark, and really this book's kind of perfect for me. Okay, so the first story is a story called Home, that on the face of it is a story about an abduction of a little girl, but you're not really sure who's taken who and who's taking who in, and you feel so uncomfortable, but you aren't really sure whose side you're on. There's another similar story that's about a boy who does a very similar thing, that's just really, really creepy. There's a story about someone watching someone in a shop, and sort of imagining their life and trying to get more and more involved in their life and imagining who they are as a person by how they act when they sell things, and trying to explain that to someone else. There's a story about a man who becomes obsessed with the stilettos of a woman who walks past his basement flat window, and the things he wants to do to get to her. There's a story about a girl who turns into a wolf, and it was kind of always a wolf, and she's vicious and wild, and her father, who is human, won't leave her, won't let her be, and loves her regardless. And they're all really dark, really gritty, but so beautifully done. These are the kind of stories I wish I could write, basically. Yeah, and I would just really highly recommend this to pretty much anyone who likes that kind of stuff. I absolutely loved it and just want to kind of push it on everyone, so by all means go and check this one out if that still sounds interesting to you. Okay, so on to the non-fiction. The first one I finished off, which I was already reading at the end of December, is Packing for Mars by Roach. This is my second Roach. I read Grunt by her, which I really enjoyed. That was talking about soldiers and the way in which people try and keep soldiers alive in war zones. Packing for Mars is talking about space travel in a very similar kind of fly on the wall kind of style, and very much that she is a newbie and trying to learn all these things, and it just gives you a really personal perspective of things that you might not otherwise get your teeth into. I thought it was funny. I actually preferred Grunt because I think I knew more of this myself, and because the stories are weird, they are weird. Some, not saying I knew all of them, but the novelty of it appeals a lot, I think, with her. So I think I enjoyed this one a little bit less, but I think it's still a really good read, and she's very funny. If you haven't read Roach, then do go and read her. People said that to me a lot, and I was sort of umdenard, but she is really easy to read, and writes really interesting books. So what more can you kind of ask for from sort of popular science, popular non-fiction? And the next one I was sent to review by Picador, and that is Letters to a Young Muslim by Maryse Gabash. This is a collection of essays, and when I hauled it, I think I compared it to Ta-Nehisi Coates' book, Between the World and Me, because it's letters from a father to a son. But there is something actually a little bit different about that, having gone through and having read the entire thing. This is a really important book. I'm going to kick off with that. This is essentially a father trying to protect his son and teach his son how to be a good person, but in the context of Islam. And I think it's beautifully done because the author considers sort of like the world stage alongside the very personal view of his son, what he knows his son has experienced, and he's trying to talk to him about things that he may never have seen or never have imagined. And it just comes from a really caring and genuine place, but talks about some really important issues. Something I did think as I was reading this is, if you are sort of new to thinking about the politics of the Middle East from people from the Middle East perspective, this may well be a really good book to start with because of the style. It's written as though it's written to a younger person, so to a sort of I guess sort of older child or early teenager. So you get sort of these little snapshots into the conflict and into sort of various conflicts and into the politics behind that, and the different kind of sects of Islam and what that means, and how sort of religious teachers sort of play into the groups and the politics, but it's done in a really gentle and easy to follow manner. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, this may be a really good place to start before you jump into something a little bit heavier. And I think had I sort of started all over again, this would be the one I'd recommend reading first. So if you're interested, I think it's really good. I also think it's a really brave book. So this is what kind of struck me the most. Is the author is writing from the United Arab Emirates. He's the ambassador for the United Arab Emirates to Russia, and I believe his father was from UAE and his mother was from Russia. But the author is pretty openly criticising Islam for certain aspects. He's there's parts as well that he clearly loves and clearly identifies with, but there are criticisms in there which aren't glazed over or aren't couched, and I think that's really brave, and I think it's really important, and it felt like a really diplomatic and a really real and a really honest book from on certain issues where maybe it's not as easy to be honest about the problems that are there. And yeah, I just thought it was really important. I thought it was really brave and really honest. And if you are sort of, watching this channel and see me talking about this kind of thing fairly regularly and interested, then I think this would be a really good one to start with. It's not unapproachable. It's not too dense, and it's not sort of too heated, which I know some of the people worry about when they go into sort of non-fiction. But it is sort of caring and kind and fatherly, and yeah, I think a lot of people might really enjoy this one. The next one I was sent for review by the author, and this one is Civilianized by Michael Anthony, and the sort of subtitle is A Young Veteran's Memoir. And this is essentially a memoir about, rather than Anthony's time in Iraq, he served in Iraq as a medic, but how he dealt with coming home. Which I think is a really interesting topic, and I read a few things around like the Iraq conflict in terms of very much in the heads of people who are there. So Redeployment by Phil Kay was one, and 5 and 25 by Michael Peacher are the two that I can think last year from the top of my head. But I've not read anything specifically talking about how war can affect people when they come back to real life, you know what I mean, like back to civilian life, and how readjustment happens after you've been in an institution and after you've been through trauma. And so this book kind of talks about his experience of coming home and his experience of dealing with PTSD, essentially. So it's quite an interesting one for me because it's new in a lot of ways, because obviously, I've not been to war. But the PTSD for me is very old news. The PTSD is stuff that I know inside out. So I think it was a really good one for me to read because I had that commonality with the PTSD elements. It sort of helped me fit in other aspects. I think it's interesting. I think it's probably it's not brilliant, but it is good. And I think it's something that if you want to learn about this kind of thing, it may appeal to you, but it's not something I'm going to shout about just in general in terms of non-fiction, just because I try and put things out there that are that I really, really love, and I think this is interesting but not perfect. And the next one I read is just a tiny little thing. Again, you would have seen it in my last video, but it's Civil Disobedience. It's an essay by Henry David Thoreau. And essentially in this essay, Thoreau is talking about at what point does it become necessary to divorce yourselves from the proceedings of the government and essentially say, I won't be part of this society. It's a really interesting essay. I didn't love the edition. I think the edition is horrible, and I really wish I hadn't bought this one, but the content is good, and he talks about things in a way that makes ideas that we wouldn't necessarily think of very obvious, and things like saying, like, why are we opted into a government from birth with no say? And I mean, I'm not sort of anti-government. He was very anti sort of paying taxes, and ended up going to prison for a time for his unwillingness to sort of cede his personal power to the government. But it is interesting to consider, and it's something I haven't really thought about before. He's also talking quite a lot about the abolition of slavery in this particular essay, because he very much, sort of hated slavery as a thing, and sort of there's a bit where he says, like, I can't imagine this government being my government when it's a government that also has control over slaves. And that was interesting to read about as well. But I didn't love it as much as I thought I was going to. I much preferred Baldwin, but then to a point I kind of think I might have liked it a bit more if it was in context with a few more of his essays. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting, and kind of something I'd not really had spoken about before, similar to Baldwin. It's just kind of a new set of ideas for me, but didn't absolutely love it, I'm afraid. And then the last one, if you follow me on social media, if you follow me anywhere, you'll have heard me chatting about this one and forcing it on people, and it's Notes of a Native Son by James Baldwin. I absolutely just fell in love with this book. You guys know that sometimes I will write in my books or sort of colour things in, and I do it by having sort of red pen, like you can kind of see there, like I underline sections where I think they're important or they're pretty or they're beautiful. And like nearly every page of this book had something on it that I thought was important or beautiful. And I just completely was just with him in his writing and the way he writes and in his language, and just absolutely gorgeous. It's been a really long time since I've read anything where every word felt so vital, and I know that I did it with Child of God last year, where I felt as though I sort of had to listen and had to pay attention to everything because it was all so much on the surface and so much just there, just waiting for you to sort of tap into it. It's a really, really important collection of essays, talking about sort of civil rights and talking about sort of how for James Baldwin, and how he sort of writes in this way in which he almost alienates himself from other black people, or puts himself in other people's shoes sometimes when he writes, and imagines what people might feel. So imagines a collection of people as an other and what that other might feel, and that's a really interesting way to read about this kind of thing. He's not saying I feel this necessarily, though he does in some essays. He's saying that, the black man feels this, and it's just a really interesting sort of way, a weird way to look and read about something, but I found it really effective. And yeah, I just thought it was really important. This, I spoke about having 12 important books in my year that I want to read, and this is definitely one of them. And I just absolutely love it. I've gone out and I've bought one of his novels because he does write fiction. And I'm really, really looking forward to reading his fiction as well. If it's anywhere near as gorgeous as his non-fiction is, then I may have found myself like a new favourite person for this year. So yeah, for what that means, for you guys, I think, go and read this. And I've been saying this on all my social media, just go, stop what you're doing, go and read this book. Go buy it, go get it. Go get it now. I think you're going to love it. So that's been my January wrap up. As I said, I've had a bit more room to talk about things and sort of tell you my thoughts and my feelings on stuff, where I haven't been able to do that in my wrap-ups previously because I've had so much. It's been brilliant, and I've also absolutely loved having the time and space to do other things in my life as well when I've not been reading so much, and the whole thing's just been really positive overall. I'm more than happy to do a sort of video just talking about how reading less has changed me this month. If you are interested in that, let me know down below, because I like doing discussion kind of things anyway. But yeah, hopefully you're all well. Please let me know in the comments down below what your favourite book that you read in this month was, and if you sort of like the idea or of any of these ones. You know, if you're interested in them, then let me know. I always love to hear if you go out and buy something, or that you think about going out and buying something, because I've spoken about it. It's always really good to know. So yeah, hopefully you guys are well, and I'll see you soon in my next video. Bye bye.